So my first question is, okay, how many people have been to this panel before? All right, okay. Okay, pay attention this time. I'm getting old. I can't keep doing this forever. How many people here actually work in the game industry right now? Okay, so I don't know why y'all are here, but welcome. No, I'm just kidding. So super happy to be here. This is a panel that we do with kind of a revolving cast of guests at PAX East, at PAX West, at the much mourned PAX South. I'm an old San Antonio boy myself, so I always loved going to San Antonio. I have an excuse to go there. But yeah, so just a couple of notes. We are going to do a Q&A at the end, but a lot of times not everybody has a chance to ask their questions. So we are going to find a space out there where the enforcers tell us to go, because you always got to pay attention to the enforcers, and we'll answer questions individually out there after the panel. So welcome. I'm loving the new PAX West with the new convention center and everything. It's a lot more walk-in, but also they can do a lot more stuff. So this is fantastic. So I want to welcome our panelists today. We're going to talk about how to get into the game industry or factors around that. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves and maybe tell us a little bit about how they first started and how they got into the industry. And we'll just go down the road, but we'll start with Mr. Isaac.
Oh. Hello. Oh, come on, man. Not a round of applause. Come on, get it up. Y'all gonna act like this, I'm going home. I'm Tramell Isaac. I am the Chief Art Officer of a yet-to-be-announced game studio. So don't ask me about it. I've been doing this 30 years this year, so it's been quite some time. Started off as an animated for about 7 years, then moved my way up to art direction and been art directing since it was 2000. So it's been about 24 years. So yeah, it's been a long time, and I've come across a lot of resumes and portfolios that probably shouldn't be coming across my desk, but I'm here to give you some advice, and that's it.
And I'm Linda Carlson. I've been in the gaming industry for well over 20 years now, but I started out as a gamer and never thought I'd be in the industry, right? You just don't think that you can make that transition. But I'm here to tell you that working in agriculture and tourism for the first 25 years or so of my career gave me all of the skill sets I needed to transfer to the game industry. And also, I didn't start working in the game industry until I was 40. So it's not too late. You can make that career change. God help you. I mean.
Hi, my name is Eric Mazer. I am the surprise fill-in, so woo. Yeah. I am a programmer.
We needed a proper geeky engineer, right?
Yeah.
You know,
we found a programmer for once. We're not locked away all the time in a dark hole. I work at a company called Play Everywhere, which does porting, so helping other people put their games on consoles. The last one I worked on was Another Crab's Treasure, which you can check out demos on the show floor. I got in through basically forcing my way into the industry. I went to college for programming, but throughout that entire process, I was actively doing game dev stuff in all of my projects. I was even cutting classes to go to special guest lecturers. And then after college, a bunch of contract work because I couldn't get a job anywhere. And then I finally got a job at a company, which was cool, until it wasn't cool. And that's a dark story for another day, but
it comes up on another slide, believe me.
There we go. After that, I got into my current company, which is full of really awesome people. So it's very much a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Hello, greetings PAX. My name is Sarah Dunsire. I'm here from a company you may know called the Pokemon Company International. I'm a customer service manager. Started in the gaming industry way back in 2000, and started actually as a customer support agent. So worked for a lot of different companies over the years, and have been a gamer since I was a little kid. My very first console was the SNES, and loved some Mario World, so glad to be here. First time at PAX, did I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, first time.
Awesome.
So my name's Rich Weil. I work for a company called ModSquad. We do customer support and community services for a lot of different kinds of companies, but we have a lot of game industry clients, and that's pretty much the field I work in. I did work in the game industry. I was 34 years old when I got my first game industry job. And I've been, working in and around the game industry for about 20 years. Don't do the math. And so one of the things we want to, kind of point out here is, there are so many different avenues. We're going to talk about it a little bit. But, I got into the game industry almost by accident. So there are a lot of different ways to get in. So we'll go to the next one. So, as I was saying, a lot of different ways to get into the game industry. The game industry needs everything that any other company needs. So, if you have a law degree, they have lawyers. If you're an accountant, they need accountants. All that stuff. So, I'd like to ask the panelists, how have you kind of morphed across different functions in the game industry, and how has that helped your career as you've gained different experiences? So we'll start with Sarah.
Yeah, so I think that obviously being like a customer service agent and starting on the ground, right, that is a really cool place to get a big understanding of the different sorts of aspects specific to customer service that you're going to need in the gaming industry long term. Over the years, I worked as a supervisor at the call center. I worked in the operations center for the call center, so kind of understanding where the support tickets are going, how we're load balancing across agents, and then eventually started working at Microsoft for Xbox. So it was kind of those crucial elements, though, of building those key understandings as a support agent, as a lead technician within that industry, that led me to understand what working for a client who needs support vendors would actually entail, and how to bring those skills and transition that into a useful skill set to take forward into my career.
Officially, I've always been a programmer. I have always studied forms of communication as well. Partially that's just to make sure that your interactions with the teams that you're working with are a lot smoother. Sometimes, in the case of visual communication, whenever I make a temporary asset, the worst thing that could ever happen for me is that temporary asset makes it into a game. So I have specifically learned how to make something that is good enough that the artists hate it and will replace it. Yeah.
Okay, so Rich mentioned that he got into the game industry almost by accident. I'm here to tell you that incidents and accidents are what got me here too. I've always been a writer. I enjoy writing, and I've always been an artist, and I love doing art. There's no money in either of those, but I was a geeky gamer, so I started writing strategy guides. I got a job unofficially, as a freelance writer for game media sites. I started doing a lot of cartography for games, specifically for EverQuest and for Lord of the Rings Online. And then I ended up working with Prima Guides for quite a few years, back when we still had paper strategy guides. And that was because of my art and writing skills. I was also a cosplayer because I'm extraordinarily introverted and I couldn't handle going to conventions as myself. So I started playing the part of Brass the Dwarf. And let me tell you, you can get away with almost anything when you're in full armor and a huge beard and a beer in each hand. And all of those things, weirdly enough, culminated in John Smedley giving me a call after the magazine I was working on shut down and asked me to come work for Sony Online Entertainment. For my favorite first MMO ever, I just about fell over. And here I am. And turns out that he hired me because of my people management skills. I had also been a volunteer guide for a while, my ability to write and to communicate and to connect with people. So accidents.
Yeah, don't listen to that. I don't know about that. It's
I
different
used to have to work with this guy.
It's different on the art side, a lot different, more technical, more skill oriented. So like, you can't just fall into it like, oh, I'm an artist now. Like, it doesn't really work that way. You have to, exercise your craft and be good at what you do in order to be able to get there. There's obviously being exposed to different types of the different departments of art. So things that you can realize you're good at is like more technical art. If you want to be an artist, you definitely have to, practice that and be on top of that and be around other artists to get better. But there's other ways to kind of get in, more on the technical side where it is less about your ability as an artist and more about your ability as a problem solver, or more technical side, closer to a programmer, but not necessarily a programmer. So there are some avenues for that, but for the most part, art is a learned skill and it requires a lot of practice and a lot of time.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think it's important to the game industry from a perspective of a business or how to work in that industry can be opaque, right? So, and I think that one of the reasons why we want to talk about this subject of the skills you already have is because if you do get a job in the industry, they're going to want you to do something. They're actually they're going to want you to do a job. So there's a lot of misconceptions about like, oh, I'll get a job in the game industry and they'll teach me how to be a designer, or they'll teach me how to be an artist, or they're not going to do that.
No.
They need you to do something. So that's why different paths that are important, whether it's some of the more common ones like QA, community, customer support, what have you, and then you develop your skills from there, or a skill that you already have, like we talked about, like law or whatever, video stuff. Anyway. So it's as I mentioned, my personal opinion is that the game industry can be kind of opaque. You see job listings, job postings and stuff, but what are they really looking for? What's going to give me a heads up? How do I start? How do I start getting into this this field, right? This industry, and also it's a matter of what are they really looking for? Job posts can be very generic and anodyne and that kind of stuff. So let's want to talk a little bit about like how to start. How to get going. That's usually kind of the hardest part, really. And also what to be realistic, what biases are out there when it comes to the game industry. So I'd love to ask the panel to share some of their experiences or advice on how to get started, for this job search, but also, what kind of, landmines, roadblocks, or whatever that they should be watching out for as they get started, and really what's some of the most important things when you start a job search. And we'll start with Linda this time.
Well, the industry and cultural biases, it's kind of interesting in the game industry world. I find that in many respects, the game industry is much more accepting of a wide variety of individuals. We don't care if you come into the office with a nose ring, tattoos all over, and wild hair, and whatever your social genre is, whatever your gender is. That seems to be highly accepted. But that was not always the case, and there are still some lingering issues. I certainly remember when I first got started in gaming, it was tough to be a woman in gaming. It really, really tough. It was misogynistic. It was nasty. The age biases were very strong. If you were over 40, you were considered way too old and out of touch to be gaming. And I'm going, half the people I know my age are gamers, so shut up, you young whippersnappers. I will come kick your ass in Fortnite. But that sort of thing still lingers in some circles, but the challenges that I went through were nothing compared to, I'm sure, the challenges that Tramell went through. It's been weird, but I think the game industry has advanced faster than other industries in accepting everyone. And I'm just going to handing that off to you.
I mean, it's hard to speak on like other people's experiences for sure, but just, you know, coming up, it was, you know, I think people went out of their way to try to not be racist and actually ended up being racist altogether, so it didn't really matter. And I think that is a symptom of people just not really understanding that everybody is somewhat different and that your experiences are not mine. I think the understanding that is going to take us a long way, and it's changed a lot for sure. And I've stopped holding my tongue when people say stupid shit to me. So, you know, I let them know, you know, why certain things are not acceptable and not, you know, appropriate. So I think just over time, like if all people are speaking up for other people, then eventually we'll get to a place where, you know, people kind of get it. But like for me, I've only had like one or two experiences like that were very overt, that were like not to the point where I looked at it and I was like, it was something that was holding me back, but it was just something that somebody said that was just like, that was just weird. Like, why would you even mention that? So like me being in an executive role now, hiring over the last year and a half, you know, I listened to, you know, other people's stories, and you know, that type of stuff is still happening to certain people. And, you know, because I'm listening to those stories, I make sure that I don't repeat some of the issues that came up in their particular past. You know, so I had an artist that I hired about a year ago, and she was telling me about some of the stuff that she was dealing with at the last company she was working for. And I just flat out told her, I was like, you know, that type of shit don't fly here. So, you know, it's up to me and anybody else in my position to be able to make sure that whatever comes after us is, you know, as level playing field as possible.
I'm about to do a really terrible thing, and Richard will just have to cut off my mic. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the state of the game industry. Yeah, no, don't touch that. I know where you live. This is a shitty time to get into the game industry, but it's also a great time to get into the game industry, and I'll tell you why. We've all seen the massive layoffs year after year after year for the last 3 years. It's scary, but you know what? A lot of those people have a lot of experience, and they've gone off and they've started their own small indie companies. Some of them are investor funded, some of them are not investor funded. And there are some fantastic little companies out there run by highly skilled individuals, and they're looking for people. Thanks. Had to say that.
Right?
So I guess as the newest person in the industry, I have some of the most recent experience, and also I guess as the most generic white guy up here. I can say that there are programs that are improving for diversity and whatnot, but as a programmer, we still get a lot of like that kind of tech focus in here. And what I've learned through a lot of this stuff is, like, while I may have a bit of a harder time slightly getting an initial interview and through that initial process, which, again, genuinely fair because it should not have been as easy as it was for a lot of people before me, once you're actually in the industry, it ends up being like a whole different thing where people are very much looking for, kind of quote, somebody that they can chill with, somebody that they're cool with. And that's where a lot of like other inherent bigotry kind of comes in for that, and it becomes like a whole kind of messy process once you're in there too. And it's just weird to talk about from my point of view, but it's just kind of worth noting because it is the other side of the coin.
Sarah?
Yeah, I would say, you know, especially if you're new, no one's going to expect you to come in being a rock star. They're going to expect you to do a job, like Rich said, right? They're not going to expect you to be amazing right out of the gate, but get amazing, right? Like find out what it is that is needed in the role that you're doing and be excellent at it. And then you may find that your biggest roadblock might be yourself. Don't let yourself get comfortable. Continue to challenge yourself. Look for the roles that are going to challenge you. If you've mastered a role, it's time to move on, right? Like, don't stay stagnant in your career. Continue growing so you can advance the breadth and the depth of your skill set and continue to invest in your most important asset, which is you.
So what are some of the most important things for people to keep in mind as they're starting their job search? Obviously from different fields, like, for example, for artists, you want to get your shit together when it comes to having your portfolio online or what have you. But what are some other things that people should keep in mind when it comes to they're just getting ready to start, they're going to start searching for jobs in the game industry? What do they need to have at the top of their mind? We'll double up with Sarah.
Are we going to talk specifically about things like interviewing skills and resumes right now, or
No,
should we
next.
wait later?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm
Just like they're just starting out.
just starting out, have a resume. That's probably good, right? Maybe get some recommendations together. Find out, sit with yourself a little bit, ask yourself, what is it that you're looking to do? What is your dream job? And spend a little time with these questions, because you will be surprised at how many times you will get asked. What kind of team are you looking to join? And if you don't have a good answer, that could be the question that, they were like, well, yeah, they're not really looking for a team like my team, or they don't really know how they fit into a team unit and how they advance the work of that team.
Yeah, what I found is that artists come up to me and they're like, well, I want to be in the game industry, blah, blah, blah. My question to them after that is like, well, what are you good at? And then they run off all of the things that they want to do without actually answering that question, like, what are you good at? You mentioned your dream job, but their dream job is not necessarily what you're good at sometimes. Like, yeah, I would like to be a basketball player, but I'm okay. I'm not good enough to be in the NBA, but that's a dream of mine. But what can you achieve is what you need to be asking yourself. And then you can walk that path to get to your dream job. Like, you can't expect that day one, like, oh yeah, you want a job? Here's your dream job. Boom, there you go. Have fun. It's like it's a path to get there. And if you don't know how to start, like the starting process is narrowing down your focus to something that you have the greatest chance of success, and then you can open it up once you get in. Like, so if you're coming up to me and saying, well, I'm good at concept art, environment art, blah, blah, blah. No way you're good at all three of those things. It's like there's a handful of unicorns out there, and most likely you are not one of them. So you just be good at one thing and then focus on that, and then that'll be a good way to get in, because your efforts in that won't be bifurcated by some other effort that goes along with that. So the effort in character art or concept art or environment art will be condensed into a time frame in which you can actually achieve something pretty nice.
I've always been a jack of all trades, and when I realized that I could actually work in the gaming industry, that people were willing to pay me for the words that I write, I doubled down on honing my writing skills. I worked really, really hard. I took online courses. I had people critique my work and just absolutely trash it. And that was important to me, because I realized that that was the skill set I could most build upon. And once I started working in gaming proper, I started in community management, because managing people and writing are the two main skills of that role. And those were the two things I could do well. I do art on the side. I'm okay at it. I'm never going to make a living at it like this guy does.
As a programmer, coding skills and interviews are a completely separate skill set from the actual coding you do in games, and its complete entirety.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, it's not something that anyone ever really kind of judges you on. They still do. You still have to pass all of that stuff. But more so what a lot of people are looking for are, again, whether or not you're a chill person to work with. No one wants to work with a person who comes in first day, says everyone's doing everything wrong. They may be completely correct, but you know what? Saying that to an entire company, it's not going to end well. And they also, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, Sorry.
I would say that one of the most important things when you're starting out is you need to understand what your situation is, and also you need to do research, right? So you need to find out where are the companies that I might want to work for? Where am I, right? I've actually had a discussion with somebody who lived in a small town in Idaho, and they said they wanted to work in the game industry. I said, great. Seattle's not far. You can move. I can't move. All right, we're narrowing it down a little bit, but there's work from home opportunities. Our internet really sucks where I am. I can't really do work from home. It's like, okay, well you're really limiting your options.
Stick to potatoes.
stick with potatoes. That's right. So that's an extreme example, but you have to kind of understand your own situation, what you're capable of doing. That's going to define your search, right? Can you move? Or how easy would it be to move? Could you work from home? Do you have that ability? Or do you live in an apartment with 17 roommates who are all opera singers? So, not the best work from home environment. So I think that is the most important thing, is do your research, understand your situation, because you don't want to get through, if you manage to, you don't want to get through the process and then at the end, they go, great, we want to bring you on board, we have this position, for a starting level, and you basically say, I can't. Then why'd you start the whole thing in the first place? But I've seen it many, many times. You have to understand what you yourself are going through, and you have to understand, where are the jobs that you want. I think that's important.
I want to quickly throw in there, too. In games with game companies, there is a lot of toxicity as well. And as part of doing your research, you can find out that kind of level at those companies and decide whether or not it is a risk that you're willing to take. Because if they are known for doing frequent layoffs, you don't want to be caught suddenly without a job. If you can at least expect it or go to a different company, that's always preferred.
So once you've done your research and you kind of know what you're going for, all that kind of good stuff, it's time to be taking some action. And a lot of that, of course, is going to happen online, websites, like LinkedIn, Indeed, or what have you. You're going to, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get the whatever job you get, you're going to get it through the internet, at least for starters. So I'd like to ask the panelists, what are some of the best practices for building this kind of online presence that you're going to use as your avatar for your job search? And we'll start with Linda.
It's interesting, over the last couple of years, I have seen the concept of the online presence of your own website and portfolio has really grown. It's an absolute must for some professions like art or for writing and that sort of thing, but I think everybody kind of needs one now, simply because the main place people go, the first place an HR professional is going to go or a recruiter is going to go is LinkedIn. They're going to check to see if you have a LinkedIn profile, what you've got there, where you've worked before, that sort of thing. So put some effort into that, and then from your LinkedIn profile, link to your own website where you can go into more depth about what your skills are, who you are, what you've really done, because LinkedIn doesn't give you a lot of space for that. So I'd say I'd really start there, and always get business cards. They're only $10, and you can hand them out at conferences like this when you accidentally meet with people, like we did with Eric, just having a glass of wine the other night. It's really great to have those, and they still have a place. Just have a URL code on it so that they can immediately scan it and add you on LinkedIn. And networking, how many people here are horrible, horrible introverts? Yeah. You'll get better at it. When you understand that we're all exactly the same and that we're all on a level playing field, and usually the person you're talking to is just as scared to talk to people as you are, just understand, we are your people, so don't be too shy.
They're more scared of you than you are of them.
Yeah, it's true.
Tramell?
Portfolio, that's the only thing that matters to me. I don't even look at resumes anymore. Then people lie on resumes. You can't lie on what you do. And like Linda says, people will look you up, so if you've got any kind of web presence, then you will get found. But first and foremost, as an artist, you need to have a stellar portfolio with your best work in it. And ultimately, the good people bubble up to the top. There's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of websites you can post on. ArtStation is one of them. Being seen there is just as good as just sending out your resume to other companies and stuff. But first and foremost, have your portfolio dialed in and be ready to, talk about specifically how you did the things in that portfolio, because people will ask.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think that an online presence is a distinguishing factor, right? Like, you want to be able to stand out. If I have 500 applicants applying for a job, how are you going to differentiate yourself from the sea of other resumes that I already have? So having an online presence, the more that you put into that, that speaks to who you are as a worker, how much effort you're going to put into something that means something to you. Be careful to pay attention to detail. Look for typos. If you've got an online presence and it's just riddled with typos and grammatical errors, that might not be super important for some industries, but if you're applying for like a content writer or an editor and you have that sort of presence online, that's definitely going to be a no.
Eric?
So I do have all of this stuff. Mainly it's just used to keep me plugged in with the industry, interacting with people, online networking and whatnot. I've never actually gotten a job through an online form of any type. It's always been in-person networking that's gotten me there. Maybe I just suck at the other stuff, but it is just the path that I took. And it includes doing stuff like going to PAX. I am an enforcer. I don't talk to devs while I do enforce, but it gets me into the city. And then afterwards, at like bars, at parties, at meetups like that, I'll do in-person networking and talk to people like that and just learn about people.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to your online presence, there's the general, right, and then there's the specific to your path. Like if you want to be obviously artists, portfolio writers, all that stuff. If you want to be a game designer, you should have designs of games that you've made, right? It's not difficult to make a game. There's so many tools. Dave Georgeson, who was on this panel a whole lot in the early days, he always said, if you want to make games, just make games. Right, you don't have to, first of all, don't think that somebody's going to hire you and then teach you how to make games. They have plenty of that, right? So, but if you want to make games, make games. So when you walk into an interview, when you're talking to somebody, you can say, look, I made this game. It's like Pong, but it has hippopotamuses in it instead, right? That's fine, because you made something, right? And he would always really drill down on that, and I think that's important. But that goes for every other kind of silo of profession. Right? You kind of know what you need for, you know what people are going to ask you, or you should know what people are going to ask you about and what they're going to ask to be shown. So, outside of some of the more general, like entry-level jobs, I think that's very important. Eric touched on this a little bit about in-person networking. We talked about the virtual presence. Now we're talking, kind of the in-person networking for, intelligence or getting, learning about openings or just, getting to know people in the industry. So I'd like to ask the, panelists how they feel about, what are some of the best practices with networking? How do you get over things like some anxiety or if you're an introvert, when it comes to social anxiety, how do you get over that kind of stuff, or how do you deal with it? And what are some good industry organizations to be part of that people who are looking to get a job can be a part of? We'll start with Sarah.
I think this goes back to something that you were saying, Rich, about knowing yourself, knowing your weaknesses. If you know that you hate public speaking, maybe look for some opportunities to get into something such as Toastmasters that will give you opportunities to practice in front of a crowd. If you don't have opportunities like that, but it is your weakness, get your 17 opera roommates to be part of your audience. Practice in front of them and just, do it more often and hone in on those skills that you might be a little bit, less skilled at currently. I'm a big fan of yet. Like, I'm not good at that yet. That doesn't mean that you can't become good at that if you invest in it. As far as overcoming social anxiety, I am a huge fan of meditation, and I would definitely recommend it for if you are finding a lot of social anxiety. It's just something that I think helps people in their everyday life. But you would be surprised at how much dividends in-person networking might pay in the end. I heard about the job that I currently am in because I worked with somebody 18 years ago. So you just never know. So it's important to have that network, to grow that network, make sure that, you are, when you're working with people, that you're treating them with respect.
Eric?
As far as organizations go, IGDA is a pretty big one. I will also say for like other resources for in-person networking, for a lot of introverts, just being at PAX, your battery is going to be drained after this. That's going to be exactly the same when you're doing in-person networking. I highly recommend checking out the AFK Room. Take this as a nonprofit that works with mental health in gamers as well as game developers. So a lot of the stuff that they can tell you and help you move forward is going to help you with just being in person at networking events and recovering from them afterwards. And as far as actual in-person networking goes, this is a bit of a negative for the industry. There is a good amount of drinking, particularly at parties and whatnot, but it kind of becomes a positive for introverts as well, because it's like, oh, you say something weird and awkward, haha, take a drink, long pause. Or like, oh, my drink's empty, let me get out of this conversation that I fully messed up, say I have to go to the bathroom, and there you go. It's just finding out fun little ways to kind of work your own path as far as networking goes.
So Eric stole some of my best ideas, therefore he's never invited to a panel again. I'm going to reemphasize IGDA, the International Game Developers Association. They hold meetups in most big cities and some smaller cities, and it's a great place to hang out with your fellow geeks and get to know people in the industry. It is a small industry, and when we start going to these events after 5 or 6 years, it becomes like a really weird family reunion, right? I'm the aunt nobody talks about, by the way. I am also a fan. Being an introvert, I do two things. One, I always find an extrovert in the crowd. That's why Rich became my best friend years ago, because you can't stop this guy.
I'm the last extrovert.
Yeah. But it helps if you tie yourself to an extrovert that you can trust to go around with. They'll start a conversation and then you can join it. And I can't meditate because I've got ADHD and I'm all over the place. That's never going to work for me. But a glass of wine really does the trick. And let me emphasize, a glass of wine. Do not get drunk and try to build relationships, because you're going to leave a really terrible impression if you do. But yeah, the industry is small. Your reputation will follow you forever. We all know each other, and we're all going to ask each other, hey, Joe here used to work for you in your org. What were they like? Happens all the time, every day.
Ditto. Everybody said everything. Like, what else? Little note, I guess. I would say, throughout my 30 years of doing this, I've only gotten 2 jobs by myself. Everything else was based on somebody I knew, or somebody that I used to work with, or somebody that told me something about a thing. So networking is extremely important. Leaving good impressions is extremely important. Even if you're not even in the industry. So like if you're in school currently and you got friends, make sure that you leave school with those connections, because you never know, one of those persons might get a job somewhere and may recommend you for that job.
All right, sounds good. Now, I know Tramell has talked about how he never looks at resumes, so I'm going to actually ask him a different question about this. But we have talked a lot about portfolios and online portfolios. So I'm curious, myself, Tramell, is there a standard of, like, this is how an art portfolio should be organized, or it should be on this particular website, or whatever?
No, there's no real standard. I mean, first and foremost, ArtStation is where everybody is. So you got to go where the eyeballs are. I would say the only rules would be for me is do not put in work that is subpar. Only if you've got like 2 things that are good or your best, or you feel that are your best, then put those 2 things up. It is not about volume of content, it's quality of content. and quality beats over. So I can see, you gonna answer that? Who's calling? Tell them you can call them back. I can see the potential in somebody in what they post, regardless of whether it's 10 things or 19 or 2, but I can see where they're going with that when they post it up. So I don't need a large selection of things to make a choice. I can understand like where people are based on the things that are put forth. So you just need to make sure you put your best foot forward. And really, those are the only rules. Like, don't put up crappy work, put up your best, and make sure it's in a place where everybody can see it.
Awesome. That's great. Linda, do you want to talk about
Sure.
resumes?
The 6-second rule is absolutely true, and that also counts for portfolios. Even I get asked to look at people's art portfolios to see if, is this good enough to send on to a game company? And they've got 5 or 6 seconds to impress me because I don't have time, right? The same is true with resumes. You had one job, so if you fail to correct your grammatical errors, your spelling mistakes, or you're dumb enough to forget to put a phone number or an email on your resume, that's all on you. You will be judged on that because you had one job. Do it right. And you've got friends. Send it to your friends. Get them to look at it for you. There's no excuse not to get it right. And the last thing, when you're writing a resume and cover letter, I am a huge advocate for customizing it to each individual job. I was out of work for about 18 months at one point, and while I was busily consulting and doing everything short of working at McDonald's, I also spent a lot of time changing because I was applying for brand positions, community positions, customer service management positions, all sorts of things. Each one had its own resume and cover letter. The way to come up with that is you look at the job description, look at the words they're using. Make note of those words because they're using a lot of automated devices now to scan these. Use the words that are in the job description in your resume and cover letter so that if they are using automated scanning systems, they're going to pick up on those.
Fun fact, as a programmer, it all matters and none of it matters. We have portfolios as well. They're just under the form of GitHub because no one ever really has time. They're rarely ever looked at. Generally, people just kind of check to see if you work on a major project and you do like contribute to stuff, or if you have created something that is actually out in the world, or if it's just like random snippets of code. As far as your resume goes, it's kind of the same thing where like, thankfully, no one cares as much if you have a spelling mistake, but hopefully if you've
We do.
repeated enough. As a programmer,
I'm judging you right now.
as a programmer, I got squiggly underlines in my coding thing that tell me when I make a spelling mistake. It's fine. Resume, though, hopefully you've done enough reviews where you don't have any. Beyond that, I will also say a lot of people are starting to use things like ChatGPT to scan them. And, you know, go to Google. There are some modern hacks that you can add to your resume in white text to mess with those. Highly recommend it.
Sarah?
Yeah, I would double down on the customization, look at those job recs, and make sure you know what you're applying for. Think about, if I was the person hiring for this role, what out of your skill sets would I want to see popping out of your resume, and highlight that. If you really look at it, you'll see a couple of key things that they're looking for. Think about your skills, what you've done in different roles in the past, and make sure that those little bullet points for those jobs really speak to that crucial skill that they're looking for. And attention to detail is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've received a cover letter that's obviously for a position in another company, and I just want to be like, good luck at Starbucks, you know, or wherever it is that you're applying. Send the right cover letter for the role that you're applying for.
Yeah, I don't have much to add except like read the instructions when you're applying online or something. They'll tell you what you need to do. Read the instructions. I know that's controversial, but also especially as part of that, be mindful of the kind of format that is designated. And if no format is designated, then it's either PDF or doc, right? So you might have an awesome Linux open source word processing program that saves in a file format nobody can pronounce, but I absolutely guarantee you they're not going to look at that resume. So you do things as, process as generic as possible, right? Because you're dealing with HR people. And as an HR person, an old HR person myself, let me tell you, we don't go to a lot of trouble.
And if you do decide to do a cover letter, I would say that's a good place to put a little personal anecdote about why this role would be important to you or why this company is important to you. If you're applying for a place and you have loved this company since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, find something to include that puts that little bit of a personal touch in there that will stand out to a recruiter so they can say, oh, okay, I understand why they're looking for this. I understand why they're passionate about this particular role.
So I am mindful of time ticking down. We've got 2 more slides to go, so I'm going to ask for quick answers. Interview, best practices, do's and don'ts in the interview based on your experience in the game industry. Start with Tramell.
Don't fuck up. Next.
That's a good one.
I mean, it's real simple.
Yeah.
Don't say nothing stupid. Do your homework, like I said, and just, be yourself. Really, that's all you can be.
Be able to speak knowledgeably about the role and about the company that you're applying to. That does mean doing your homework. And yeah, don't fuck up. That's basically it. And you will. Sometimes you're going to blow an interview. Get over yourself. Go to the next one.
When they ask you if you have any questions at the end, my favorite question is, what is your least favorite place about working at this company? It will give you the most insight you will ever get there, and there's a chance that you don't get the job because you asked that question, but you probably don't want to work at the company at that point.
Absolutely.
It's also fun sometimes when you take control of the interview, if you end up getting the skill to do that and the right time to do it.
Yeah, I would also say for interviews, make sure that you are not so overly prepared that you have the impression given that you're just reading off of a piece of paper next to your webcam. Be personable, be yourself. You don't want to have a job at the end of the day where you received it by giving that performance, because you're not going to bring that to work every day. And then if you do flunk a job interview, look at why, find out what went wrong, and then work on that and become better at that. And then you will have a better chance of success at your next interview.
I'd like to add something. Eric, you mentioned something. Like, you can't really don't just go in expecting them to be interviewing you. You're also interviewing them. So there's a give and take in both of these things. So you have to walk away feeling confident that it's a place that you want to work. They have to, walk away with it that you're the person they want to hire. So make sure you're getting something out of the interview as well.
My only advice is the basics, right? If it's an in-person interview, take a shower, use deodorant, look decent, right? Even for the game industry with all the green hair and hardware in the face and all that kind of stuff, still, you don't have to wear a suit. Actually, don't wear a suit, but be professional, right? That is important. And also practice. If you're nervous about interviews, the best thing you can do is practice. Have somebody interview you. Call me. I will. I love doing interviews. So I think it's really important to practice when it comes to interviews. It'll take the edge off big time. So lastly, so after the interview, so you've had your interview, you're waiting on feedback or what have you, not sure what's going on, you're dealing with crazy HR people like me, and so what are some of the best ways to follow up after you've had the interview? And we'll start with Linda.
It's a tough one because a lot of companies now, and I hate this, won't even respond. Right? You've had an interview and you're not going to hear back from them, like ever. And I think that's rude and unacceptable, but that's on the company. I do think that you should definitely follow up. If you haven't heard back within a week, send a polite email asking what the status is. Do you have a time frame for your decision? You need to do that because it's going to keep you up at night. So you don't know how hard you should push for other jobs while you're waiting for the dream job. But by all means, keep interviewing, because even when they say they like you and they say they're going to hire you, it's not a real deal until you get a written offer that you sign. So always keep your options open.
Tramell?
Yeah, I would concur on that. I'd say, I don't really care if they get back to me or not. Like, the whole ghosting thing is just kind of like whatever. It's like, it is what it is. It happens so often that it's not even a big deal anymore. So just expect it, and like Linda was saying, just keep it moving, because just because this particular place isn't working out doesn't mean that the 5 other places that you have on your list won't. So just keep it moving and move on to the next one, but don't sit around and wait on anybody because this is your time, not theirs.
Sarah?
Find out who it is appropriate for you to follow up with. Don't pester the hiring manager 16 times if it's the recruiter you're supposed to be contacting to find out the status. Learn from your mistakes. Be self-aware. Ask for feedback if it's appropriate, especially from the recruiter. Usually they'll be able to give you at least a succinct kind of high level. You know, we went with a candidate that had X. Well, why, if you did have X, why didn't that come through in your interview? Go back, think about your questions, your answers, or maybe why didn't that come through in your resume or your online portfolio? And make sure that those things are called out because you don't want to be passed over for skills that you definitely do have. You want to make sure those are showing up for you.
Eric?
When you do follow up, always be polite, always be nice. Try not to be desperate, even though that can be hard sometimes. And I will also note that it's very likely that you're going to be applying to literally hundreds of jobs. That means there's going to be a lot of rejection there. Like, a lot of times, maybe it's just filled like the day before, or like there's a public job role that they already know who they're going to hire, and they just have to legally put a public job role out. So there's going to be a lot of rejections. It could come from your dream job. It could come from one that you thought you would easily get in because you thought that company sucked. It doesn't matter. The important part is to make sure you have friends, you have family, and you have ways to continue to deal with it as you normally do, like with your everyday life.
I think when it comes to getting feedback, one thing that I've always liked to do is, ask just straight up, when might I hear back, right? It doesn't always work, but getting them to commit to saying something is at least something you can maybe use down the road. Like they say 2 weeks, and then you call them or you email them back 3 weeks. So, no, just so you know, it's been a few weeks. Y'all said 2 weeks. What's going on? Kind of thing. I also think that it's important, and don't pester them for sure, because it's not going to do any good. I do think it's also important to realize like the rejection sucks, right? And the further along you go in the process, the more emotionally invested you're gonna get, and the rejection hurts more. So it's just something that you kind of need to realize, and you kind of keep your skepticism up. And like Linda said, keep interviewing. You have one interview, and somebody you're like, oh, I crushed it. This is a job I want. They're gonna give it to me. They might not, So it's very important, I think, to manage those expectations and keep all your options open. And especially, it's really, I see a lot of people make this mistake. They'll do an interview, they think they'll do well, and they'll already just start thinking about it as if they had the job. Well, I'm going to do this. And there's something to be said for positive thinking, but, you don't, I just have to echo what Linda said. You don't have anything until you have the offer. And that should guide your interview process too, and what you say, and what and the kind of information that you give, or your willingness to do, work in a certain place or what have you, right? Because don't negotiate in the interview. You have to make sure that you understand that you don't have anything until you have the offer. So everything should be geared towards getting an offer. Not lying. I mean, because you're not going to be able to do the job if you're lying to get it. But yeah, so we have a few minutes. Let's talk about salary negotiations. What are some do's and don'ts, best tips for salary negotiations? And just as a reminder, we are going to answer questions outside. Sarah?
Yeah, do a little bit of research beforehand. If it's posted, know the range of the job and what it might pay. Understand kind of where you are on your skill level within your career and where you might fall within that range of pay as a result of that. If it is not a tenable offer, it's perfectly acceptable to negotiate. And there's more that goes into a job offer than just the salary. Consider the benefits, consider if there's any bonus, is there a sign-on bonus, is there an annual bonus? Perhaps there's stock incentives depending on where you're applying to. So make sure you're looking at the whole entire package. Don't just get stuck on, oh, that's a low, salary number, but, this particular job that you're looking at has the potential for a 30% bonus every year. That might really make up that lower salary number. But, obviously, we're all human. We have bills to pay. You have to consider, will this be acceptable for me on a day-to-day, because I can't count on that, whatever the bonus might be. So look at the entire package, and it's okay to ask questions. It's okay.
Tramell?
I would say, in addition to all of that, but make sure you understand like what the opportunity could do for you. So, like I was saying earlier, everything's basically a stepping stone to something else. So that opportunity might open the doors to whatever your so-called dream job actually is. So let that be a consideration when you're talking about salary, because maybe that salary is not exactly what it is that you're looking for, but it's on a path to where you need to go. Also, something to remember that wherever you start, depending on how you move through your career, could put you at a disadvantage later on in your career. So, usually is what's like a 15% bump every time you change jobs or something like that. But if you're starting at 15 and somebody else is starting at 20, then they've already got a head start on you. So just be aware of that.
Linda?
I don't even want to answer that question. I'm terrible at salary negotiation. I really, really am. I know of 3 or 4 employees who used to work for me who make a lot more money than I do because they're good at salary negotiations, and that's the way of the world. But I would definitely say, like Tramell was saying, do think about what this career is going to do for you. I took a bit of a cut in salary to take my present job as a director of business development because I really wanted to learn this. This was a new and challenging field for me, and I thought I could do a lot of good for a lot of people in the course of doing that. And it has been fantastic. The last 2 years has been like getting a free college education. So it made sense for me to take that role at a slightly lower rate, and I have zero regrets. And if I go for a different role in a couple of years, then I will definitely try to negotiate for a higher salary because I am getting up in years and I've got maybe 10, 15 years left in me. Yeah. But know what you need. If you have to move to San Francisco, understand that it's very, very expensive to live there. If you're taking a job where you can work from home and they're offering you a lower salary, that's great because in Idaho, that is going to be an easy way to make a living, right? So it's very situational.
Eric?
Still relatively new, so I haven't exactly been able to do negotiations much jumping from company to company. So I'll just say money is needed to survive. It is not worth selling your soul for. There are going to be a lot of companies that are going to want you to sell your soul for it, and the amount of money that they give you is not going to be a lot. And I have accepted those jobs in the past because it got me into the industry, and those companies knew that. They will abuse you, but I knew that going in, and I made the terrible choice of continuing with it anyway. Like, I hope nobody ever has to get that choice, but it's what it is sometimes.
I would say just in general, first of all, be realistic, right? So if you know the job's going to pay around 80K, the thought process of, well, I'll ask for 160. So then we'll negotiate and we'll end at 100 or something. They won't they'll think you're crazy, right? So it's really important to understand that process and be realistic in that process. Not just like, oh, I'll just ask for as much as I can possibly get, because you won't get anything then. But anyway, so I would, and in general about job searches, you're not alone. Other people are doing job searches, maybe not necessarily competitively. Reach out for help. You can ask questions of your friends or other people or at a networking event. Somebody asked me a question of, I'm looking for this kind of job, but I'm not really having a lot of luck. I'd love to answer that question. You're not asking me to hire you, right? So, and I think that in general, the game industry can be a very kind of welcoming place for that kind of stuff, right? So I do want to thank my panelists, or the panelists rather, And thank you all for coming. And as I said, we are going to be outside answering questions. So thank you very much. Thank you.